Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today we're going to highlight a few of the topics that folks in our audience seem to be concerned about or who have been asking some questions and asked Thomas to address them. Topics we'll be talking about today will be Iran, China, Trump 2020, and the FBI. So let's get started. Thomas, which one of those interests you?
Let's talk about Michael Horowitz and Comey, because I'm afraid Tom Fenton's head is going to explode. And I just want to explain something to Tom. And the rest of you will be able to substantiate this who are longtime subscribers, that we have already told you exactly what was going to happen with Michael Horowitz's IG report. We told you the second he was appointed what was going to happen. And it was exactly what has happened, and it's exactly the same as we've told you with other different investigations going on. Now, let's remember, what we're seeing now is the end of a report that was supposed to be finished when William Barr came into power. He basically told Horowitz, finish up. Horowitz said 2 more weeks. And the same thing happened with Robert Mueller, remember? William Barr went and said, you should be finishing up here, Bob. And Bob did finish up. He said he's going to finish up in 2 weeks. He finished up in about 2 months. Same thing with Horowitz. 2 weeks, 2 months. Why? Because he had to get together the end game. What is the end game of Michael Horowitz's Department of Justice Inspector General investigation?
Well, can I take a guess before you go further? Because I would say, since he is a member of the Senior Executive Service and he is at the DOJ, that his job is to stall for as long as he can until people in power can cover from there on in.
Yes, cover their trails, cover the evidence, hide exculpatory evidence, so on and so forth. And that's what is standard. We told you from the beginning, Michael Horowitz is one of the evilest people in Washington, D.C. as a lawyer who is there to do only one thing, to cover up for the rich elite or cover up for the political elite. And so his investigation is a complete scam. He didn't even include Robert Mueller's special counsel in, material because he listened to Sally Yates, who wrote, when she was the Assistant Attorney General, for just a moment, she wrote a piece against it, a position piece against it, saying that he couldn't look at the evidence that Robert Mueller was looking at. So at this point, Michael Horowitz claims he has not looked at the evidence that was used in the special counsel, which should have been the number one set of evidence that he looked at, but he didn't. And let's remember, this is the Michael Horowitz, who we had already pointed out, is the number one lawyer who goes around and tells corporations how to get out of their crimes and tell judges how to sentence them and to allow corporations to get out of their crimes. So Michael Horowitz is a fixer. He's the worst of the fixer. He is the person who trains the judges like Jesse Liu with Andrew McCabe. Michael Horowitz would have already instructed Jesse Liu on exactly how to handle sentencing in cases like this. And what did Jesse Liu find with Michael Horowitz's recommendation that Andrew McCabe's 2 times of lack of candor needed to go to an investigation? Well, they had a grand jury, and a grand jury is where they make sure to hide the evidence and where the elite are innocent and where the innocent are guilty.
So this type of lawfare is interesting because they force people into silos of what they can see and can't see. So if IG Horowitz can't look at what Mueller's done, that limits the scope of what he can do, but it's designed that way on purpose.
Absolutely. And remember, we had already predicted that that IG Horowitz, Michael Horowitz, will someday wish to be the head of the DOJ, the Attorney General, or he wishes to be the head of the FBI. And that's because he's been groomed to be that, because he is a fixer. That's his job. And as he is a fixer and working for corporations and telling them how to get out of multi-billion-dollar lawsuits or fines brought against corporations by the government, he knows exactly. Do you think they don't pay him? Do you think they don't put money in his offshore account when he goes to major corporations and tells HSBC how to get a $50 million fine on laundering a few $100 billion. I mean, we're talking about standard operating procedure, and Horowitz is that.
Well, that's interesting because the social medias, especially Google, are begging to be thrown to the DOJ to break up their monopolies. They're begging that, I would guess, because they know they have friends like Horowitz at the DOJ that will help them wiggle out of their problem.
Oh, absolutely. And Horowitz, let's remember, Horowitz, what can we expect? We told you what to expect. There will be no convictions, and there will be no indictments. Now, going into this, people told us we were crazy. Horowitz is the white hat. He's looking at 7 different investigations. Remember, Sessions threw 2 investigations that Trump ordered him to do into the IG investigation. So Michael Horowitz, to my count, had 7 areas that he was supposed to be investigating. The first one is done. That was the politicalization between the FBI and DOJ. And he found none except for Andrew McCabe might not have told him the truth. Well, there were 5 cases against Andrew McCabe, okay? After Jessie Liu, who we've already explained who she is, let Andrew McCabe off, she listed all the crimes he committed and then said she's choosing not to prosecute. Okay? Same thing as always. It was a delay tactic. It went on forever. McCabe got over $500,000 put in his GoFundMe account for his lawyer, which he didn't even need one because he was in a grand jury. And it was a grand jury indictment.
Not to mention what his wife, Jill McCabe, kept after her failed campaign for some election out there.
And again, the only one who quotes the right number, $750,000 was given to Jill McCabe. She used about half of that, kept the other half. That was money from Virginia and money from Hillary Clinton's victory fund. Okay? So we are talking about the 5 cases are not, Jill McCabe is the incidental one. The other ones are Uranium One and the case of William Douglas Campbell, who was their informant, who has said that he witnessed McCabe for 10 years allow the Russians to take over a uranium flow in America through the Uranium One deal and hiding all the truth of it. And so this is a well-known fact. And then, of course, McCabe was involved in rewriting what Comey wrote as his opinion on Hillary Clinton getting off of the midterm exam. Now, mind you, I want to reiterate this because we're about the only ones who keep saying this. Hillary Clinton was not even a person of interest in the midterm exam. She has not been investigated for her crimes of espionage and for her breaking all of her security contracts, for having her server not on a government server and her BlackBerry, the whole thing. Do not forget that Comey chose not to bring charges against her because he never investigated her. And this is a fact. She was never questioned. There was no 302 written on it. There was no recording. She was never considered a person of interest in the case. She was never investigated. Now, we know this, and so Andrew McCabe was allowed to get off on that. That was one of the 3. And then there was the fact that Andrew McCabe was in charge of one of the Clinton Foundation investigations. And then there was a second one that they said was started when the first one faltered and literally had done nothing, and it came out that he had done nothing, and so a second one was created. What about all those crimes? And those are not part of the 28 crimes of treason that he participated in with James Comey. Now, we're going to tell you this, and then we're going to go back to Michael Horowitz and his stupid report. We say, and I'll stand by this with a nickel on the line with this bet, that when James Comey came and perjured himself in front of the whole world after he had been fired in his testimony before Congress, where they hoped to, of course, entrap President Trump. And remember, this was multiple entrapments of Comey, the whole thing of the lying, that there was no investigation, entrapment, that there was a counterintelligence going on and he refused to tell Trump, entrapment, that he went and only told him one of the pages of the many pages of the dossier in the Trump Tower meeting between Comey and Trump, entrapment. The entrapment of the Trump Towers meeting with Donald Jr., the entrapment, on and on and on. 28 cases of treason.
And don't forget this testimony in Congress. all of these attorney criminal elected officials, because it's the attorney elected officials that are doing this, made it legal to lie in Congress. Wasn't that originally done by Mueller? And so even when they're there telling the so-called truth, they know it's okay to lie.
Yes, elected officials don't have to tell the truth in congressional investigations. And remember, congressional investigations have little power anyway. So what we told you and no one else told you, and I'm going to say it now again for the 100th time. Comey was the star witness in the grand jury indictment in this Robert Mueller special investigation, and he was given immunity for everything that Robert Mueller asked him about. Now, Robert Mueller knew Comey's crimes because he is his friend. He had been working on those crimes with him during the entire time, since 2015. In the spring of 2015 is when all this nonsense started, and Comey became involved with the fake story that the DNC, the Democratic National Committee's computer server, had been hacked, which it never had been hacked and never was hacked. But they knew this, and this is in the records that the FBI came to the DNC over and over and over again. So Comey was involved in that from the beginning. Okay, so he knew everything. So what did Robert Mueller ask him? Everything. And then what did he give him immunity for? Everything that he asked him questions about. That's the way it works. That's the way crime is perpetrated by our law enforcement officers in Washington, D.C. They allowed Comey to be the star witness so that he could insinuate that somebody bigger was part of some other crime. Well, there was no other crime. So how could Comey tell that Trump was part of some crime that there was no crime? The only other crimes were the crimes of Peter Strzok and Bruce Orr and Nellie Orr and Lisa Page and all the Brits and all the Italians involved and all these other people and the Australians. Those were the crimes. Those were seditious acts of treason if they were domestic, and if they were foreign, those were war acts. And those were acts to depose a sitting president and to destroy the 2016 election.
All part of George Soros's Purple Revolution.
That's right. And you can bet that each of these people who is a globalist, because they are globalists, because when Comey isn't working as the head of the FBI, what's he doing? He's out working for the globalist British bank HSBC. He's out working for Bridgewater. Robert Mueller's out working for Mellon Optima.
And then you got McCabe going over to CNN. I mean, it's just one big cesspool, but it's so good to see with the researchers at AFI where this all started, and we're seeing that the early roots of all of this is where you find your British spies and your British reporters to spread propaganda. That's why I call it British lies and British spies. And it walks itself, this history walks itself right to this point where we see this FBI. And the FBI has become, and folks, rub your eyes, I want you to see what's really happening. The FBI is a central police. And our founding fathers warned us of central police. And you may say, what is that? Well, if you look at the Nazis and you look at the Gestapo, that's a central police. And that's what our FBI has become. When you look at what they've done from Waco to this overthrow attempt of Donald Trump, and I'm including everybody, because if you're rank and file and you are in the FBI office and you have called out none of this and done nothing of this, you are put yourself in a position of a central police. So I say we must, for our Constitution, we must demand that the FBI be disbanded. The functions can be sent out to the 50 states. And in the interim, I want to see the U.S. federal marshals walk into that building and empty it. I'm saying.
That'd be nice.
But you say it won't happen.
That won't happen.
Why? Does anybody in this country have guts to take care of what's happened to our country?
Yes, John F. Kennedy. And the same fate will go for anyone who speaks up and says that they will end the CIA, which should be ended, clear out the counterintelligence department of the FBI, clear out the counterintelligence department of the State Department, and stop the rogue CIA. And that's what he intended to do. And the Pilgrim Society and these men that he talked about in power were the same people we talk about. And they killed him and his brother. Okay, and they'll kill Trump if Trump actually attempts to do what he did on one of his first things that he did as he became the president, is he went to the CIA and said, these columns got to stop. These columns are in the way. He was saying they're the fifth column attacking America. He called out the rogue CIA. Have you heard of one single thing that the CIA has done since Trump has come to power?
Yeah, they put Gina Ray in charge, and then we go and look, and she was running the London office when all of this coup d'etat overthrow was being planned with the Brits. Don't tell me Gina Ray isn't in on this. That's
Gina
what they've
Ray
done.
Or Gina
Haspel.
Haspel.
I know. It's just all one big conglomeration of evil, isn't it?
Yes, well, but she hasn't done a thing. Not one thing, not one war has been fomented. The British attempts on false flags in Iran, in Syria, in North Korea, all these things. No. Why? Because the CIA is no longer working with the Brits to work against Americans and false flags to get us into wars so we can be the defense arm of the United Nations, because Trump has taken the United Nations down and he's not going to go to war and he knows these are false flags. So let's go back to Michael Horowitz. Michael Horowitz going after Comey. We told you. This is what we told you. Go back, listen to the tapes previously, or the audios. I call them tapes because that's when I started in radio, was when there were still tapes. Leaking. What happened to James Wolfe for leaking? So James Comey, leaking. Let's say he gets prosecuted. James Wolfe, after giving out the entire FISA applications and their justifications to his girlfriend, Allie Watkins, got 2 months in jail and went right back to working for the government. In other words, the biggest leak ever in U.S. history got 2 months. And he was the head of the entire Senate Intelligence Committee security staff. He's as big a criminal as he could possibly be. 2 months. Comey. Okay, so Horowitz, the evil Horowitz, the evil witch hunter Horowitz, the evil inquisitor Horowitz is really after Trump. Because what did he do? He took the evidence that would have exculpatory evidence showing that Trump was not colluding with the Russians. That was a fake story. Lisa Page and Peter Strzok's messages, 55,000 of them. We've only seen a few hundred of them. Horowitz allowed Peter Strzok himself to go through the 55,000 and remove anything that was of a personal nature, any attachments, or any references to senior executive service members, or anything to do with his supposed sexual affair with Lisa Page, which you say he never had, and I agree with you now, because the reality is that was an excuse to get rid of almost all 55,000. Now, the 55,000 were 1/4 of the ones that would have come forward, except 3/4 of them can't be found because both of their cell phones at the moment that it really started to get thick with Trump and they went after Flynn, both Lisa Page and Strzok's cell phones, they didn't work anymore and they didn't keep any messages. And by the way, they think they're their messages. Those are government phones. No. There's no such thing as a personal message on a government phone when you have a top secret security clearance and you're having sex with somebody out of wedlock. You lose your security clearance, both of them instantaneously. That's what happens. Remember, in their messages, they leaked to Devlin Barrett on a regular basis up and beyond what Rybicki was leaking and the other person in underneath Comey whose job was nothing but leaking to the press. Here's the contact with the press, but that was the leak with the press. When they said senior members in the FBI, that was the leak, who was a professional leaker, Comey's man. Now, Comey leaking is a joke. We told you Michael Horowitz would indict no one, and that if he was going to indict someone, then the rule says he has to bring the evidence forth and give it to the DOJ before his report is over so that they can decide whether they're going to actually indict the person. Well, that's what Horowitz did. He said, here's, at the last moment, down to the last second, August 29th, I think it was, he was given basically a deadline of September to get his report in. So he had the last day, comes forward and says, I want James Comey prosecuted for leaking, but we already know, or at least you know if you listen to us, that Robert Mueller gave complete immunity to James Comey, so the leak charge would not hold. That is why William Barr turned it down. He had to turn it down because he already knows in his Durham and his investigation of the situation that Comey was given immunity. So he's not going to go after Comey for a small-time infraction. We had said, John Barnwell, myself, and Betsy had said that when James Comey perjured himself 3 times in front of the entire U.S. public on TV, 3 times, and then 3 times he went to Trump and said to Trump, "You are not being investigated," and then Trump tweeted it out and said, "Comey just told me I'm not being investigated." Then there were 3 separate meetings with Trump, which are in the memos. We're going to get to the memos in a second in case you're worried about those little memos, and wait till I tell you about those memos. I've told you before, but when you get it now, you're going to say, oh my gosh, yeah, the anonymous patriots were right. The conclave was right. Betsy was right. John Barnwell was right. Comey perjured himself on purpose because he knew that there were bigger crimes. And if the perjury would be the crime that he could settle on, that he wouldn't actually be prosecuted for the bigger crimes. And so this was all part of the plan. And remember, Comey said to all of us, he told the whole world this, I'm not making this up. He told the whole world, I leaked my personal memorandums. Now they're called memorandums instead of 302s. He's the guy who invented 302s being evidence if they're written by a government agent. So technically, his memorandums are 302s, and he classified them, and I don't know why no one else out there is saying this, not a single person, not even Tom Fenton. I cannot believe no one is saying this. Comey says in his memos that he classified one of them secret, not confidential. So they were absolutely conscious. He didn't give that one out, by the way. The one that was classified secret, he did not give out. He gave them to Daniel Richman. Daniel Richman gave them to New York Times. Incorrect. He did not give them to a reporter at the New York Times. Comey was already a writer for the New York Times. Daniel Richman was already a writer for the New York Times. Daniel Richman was also a lawyer. Comey also showed them to his 3 other lawyers. All of this is illegal. And then they try to say that they're going to keep anonymous the name of the person who wrote the article. Comey wrote the article. Comey wrote the article, I know, because he had already written and was very proud that he had written position papers against Trump, and that he offered that in December of 2015 as the way to take down Trump by writing, because he literally said that he already was a writer for the New York Times, and that any article he writes, they print, and he's going to write an article saying Trump is connected to the Russians. That was the first plan. That was Comey's first suggested plan of treason in December 16th, I believe it was, of 2015. That was the first plan. 28 other plans of treason happened after that. That was just an idea. They all told him to shut up.
But there's the example of intelligence working with the fake media. And that's always been that way. Media, propaganda, and the intelligence communities.
Correct. And later, Comey, in his self-righteous indignation, came out and said, he was my lawyer. You can't prosecute me. They were my personal memos. You can't prosecute me. I kept them at my house. You can't take them from me. I kept them at my FBI office, and when Trump fired me, they're still there, and you can't take those either because those are my personal memorandums. Though all of his lawyers told him the opposite. Anyone would tell him the opposite because that's complete nonsense. They're all privileged. They're all executive privilege. There's nothing higher. Nothing higher than executive privilege of the president speaking to the FBI director, who then writes it down as if it's evidence. 302, it's not, and then calls it later a memorandum, and that they're personally his, which they are not. That's like saying Lisa Page and Peter Strzok's messages were theirs, private messages. No, they were on government phones. They were paid for by we the people, and they have oaths of their office that put them in jail for doing what they did. Same thing for Comey. And by the way, we don't have his text messages or Andrew McCabe's text messages or Bruce Orr's text messages yet. Where are they? Oh, don't worry, Michael Horowitz hid them. Michael Horowitz not only hid the 55,000, remember, we had the 55,000 text messages, then they disappeared. And then Michael Horowitz found them. And then they disappeared again because he allowed only 238 of them to come out after they had been screened by Peter Strzok himself.
Keep in mind, we haven't seen the worst of those texts.
No, we have already seen threats against the president's life, assassination threats, in those text messages, and no one wants to do anything about it. But anyway, the point is, Horowitz set up from the beginning. We told you, just like Robert Mueller would only go after low-hanging fruit for crimes that had happened long before, and there's no such thing as conspiracy to collude, and there's no such thing, his special counsel investigation was falsely created, and to not allow Michael Horowitz to look at that information. In other words, no one but Robert Mueller and his team of 13 angry Democrats, which ended up being 17 angry Democrats, and remember, 4 of them were fired, and some of them are British agents, and on and on and on, and they were the people who handled the dossier from the beginning. So these are the criminals who are covering up the crime that never is going to be seen by anyone, including Michael Horowitz, or anyone will ever see. The true evidence of the hundreds of people who were interrogated by Mueller, many of whom were given immunity after that. Sergei Milian, Stephen Rowe, Joseph Mifsud, Stephen Halper.
All right, well then
they all have immunity.
Okay, if they all have immunity and we can't do anything about it, then we need to go to who was organizing this at a higher level. So we need to go in to looking at the Privy Council, Richard Dearlove, George Soros, and the folks that were orchestrating all of this.
If we can prove that Rod Rodenstein, had colluded with Robert Mueller and Comey ahead of time, then they all go down, because we can then throw out the entire special counsel investigation and all decisions, indictments, and convictions made by that. Now, they sent out 17 other cases to 3 other districts. They're still going on, and Manafort will stay in jail.
Once again, throwing it all out into silos.
Absolutely, of judges who are already crooked to begin with, who've already been given their orders, and if they don't follow them, they get deposed from the top by Supreme Court Justice Roberts, who did that with, we assume it was he who did it, with Contreras, who was on the impaneled grand jury for Robert Mueller, but he was a close friend of Peter Strzok's, and so he had to step down, but not until after the case was almost over. Same thing with Tanya Chutnik, and same thing with all these judges. What about John Podesta's cases and his dear lawyer friend that he still teaches classes with at Georgetown? Is anyone going to do anything about the corrupt justice system? We know what's going to happen before the case gets sent there. So we knew this was going to happen, and this is what has happened. Michael Horowitz's 7 investigations, no convictions will arise from them. We've said this. I asked John just a few minutes ago. I think he said, didn't we say that 2.5 years ago? It might have been that long. Yes, we predicted everything down to the T.
It wasn't a prediction. It was understanding the history and what was going on. Any awake citizen could see this.
We called it a process crime.
Yes.
Comey will be... they will suggest a process crime, and that process crime will be whittled down to nothing. Well, that's what Barr just did. So now people, okay, that's the Horowitz thing. Standard operating procedure. Don't be surprised. Same thing as the special counsel. But what's happening with William Barr? Well, let's remember William Barr. The talk of impeachment is only from insane people now. Even the midstream Democrats, the demon rats in the House, are saying no impeachment. Nancy Pelosi, the queen of the snake people, is saying no impeachment, okay? So it's not going to happen, folks. Trump will be reelected in 2020, guaranteed. You know how I know? Because I know that all the polls are twisted. They're twisted, and I can tell you how many points they're twisted by.
We already know that. What's that stuff about the memorandum you were talking about?
Fox News now is 15 to 25 points skewed for Democrats.
Fox News is a propaganda channel. Why would we listen to anything they say?
Okay, the memorandums. Those are Comey's excuse that he uses when he wishes to convict somebody. He writes up his own personal diary notes. And we've talked about this a lot before with the Ashcroft case and with Mueller and Comey. Same exact thing. Same exact thing. That he says at one moment that his notes are law and they're more important than executive privilege or being considered secret. And at another moment, they're his private notes. They don't matter at all, and he has the right to keep them in a safe at home. See? what's going to happen? If it had gone to the DOJ, Barr would have lost the case. So Barr decided from the beginning he's not going to try that case. He's going to wait for the only thing that can take all this down and re-include Robert Mueller and his 13 angry Democrats, Andrew McCabe, and James Comey and his entire bunk buddy group, which
and what's
includes...
that going to be?
That's going to be conspiracy to overthrow the President of the United States of America. This is a conspiracy.
Yeah, and so he's going to have to name them all.
Yes.
All at the same time.
Yes. And the only thing that can save these people is if they come out now as whistleblowers. And if they don't, they're all complicit. Remember, Michael Horowitz is now complicit with the conspiracy to overthrow President Trump. Because he is supposed to be looking at politicalization of the DOJ and the FBI.
Yes.
Couldn't have been any worse.
Yes.
He's supposed to be looking at leaks and he only finds Comey. We know in the text messages who the leakers were leaking to and when they leaked and who they leaked and what they leaked, and then they talked about the leaks. They're not being charged now, are they? Oh, what are the other cases that have gone to Horowitz? Does anyone remember?
What about Hoover? What's all the stuff that Hoover was supposed to produce?
Hoover was hired to come handle all the cases that Horowitz was going to generate.
Uh-huh.
I told you.
I know you did.
And everyone.
We hear you.
Hoover will do nothing. He doesn't need to move here from Utah because he's not going to do anything. They kept saying, it's been 2 months and he hasn't moved here from Utah yet. He hasn't even checked in at Washington, D.C. And then they asked him and they said, I do my work here from Utah. It's okay, folks. He's done nothing. It's a cover-up.
He's obstructing and stalling and
Correct.
waiting for the political climate to change.
But some of
you
these
got
people...
Hillary Clinton in the wings ready to run right over Biden and become the nominee again.
We have to remember the way the SES works. You have every single person, I'm going to have to scoot back from the microphone. You have every single person who signed the 4 FISA warrants now admit that they didn't read any of them. They now testify that they did not read the content for the application for the highest FISA court warrant, a domestic Title I 702 FISA court warrant of the top judges appointed by the Supreme Court Justice himself.
Okay, so that shows that they are ruled. Somebody is ruling them. Who rules these people?
Justice Roberts.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and they're all crooked. Because Admiral Rogers pointed that out, and he pointed out that they grant 99.9% of requests, and they don't even look at an application. Well, James Comey had to sign that. And when he signed it, he has an agreement. And this is going to come out later, and this is what's being mentioned on the side, because Michael Horowitz's report, which I just read, though I wasted my time. I had told myself I'm not going to read that stupid report because there's nothing in it I didn't already predict. It's just going to be lies, complete confabulation nonsense. It's worse than that. It's like the intelligence community's 5-year report, which looks like a brochure for Salvation Army. There's nothing in it, folks. There's nothing in it. What James Comey did, he told the whole world he did. And nothing happened. And now Michael Horowitz wants to say, maybe you could consider this and ignore all of his other crimes? And I'm not going to tell you that he has immunity, and I'm not going to tell you anything. So where's all the other Comey crimes? Now, what are the other 5 things? Andrew McCabe, politicalization, leaks. Hang on. Uranium One and CFIUS. Remember when Jeff Sessions was ordered to investigate it? And he refused to? And he sat there with Christopher Wray and said, I'll just give it to Horowitz. Clinton Foundation investigation? Imran Awan investigation? And the DNC corrupt FEC investigation of Hillary Clinton, who took... don't get me started on enumerating all the crimes she committed against Bernie and against the Democrats and what the Democratic National Committee did and all of that. And then Trump said, where's the other server? Jeff Sessions, where's the other server? Is the server in Basira's office that was the Imran Awan scandal? Not to mention, Trump in the same tweets mentioned that there was no hacking of the DNC. Show us the evidence. How come only CrowdStrike has ever seen the evidence? The FBI wrote 7 reports about it without ever seeing one speck of evidence, but they knew of its existence, and they knew that it wasn't what CrowdStrike said in April of 2015.
So the FBI is a terrorist organization.
Yes, they are the SS.
Okay.
They are the SES in America, the Senior Executive Service, and they are the SS.
And I'm calling upon anyone out there who can help. We need to get the U.S. Federal Marshals in there and clear that place out.
Now, let me tell you how it works. I'm sitting there, and I'm Andrew McCabe. And you see this in the text messages, you see it in testimony, you see it in all kinds of people's testimony, Lisa Page's testimony, in James Baker's testimony, and other people's, some of which have been closed doors, some of which have been leaked, and other things. But what you really see is absolute indifference to the law. These people acted any way they darn well pleased. And when they say that Lisa was having sex with Peter, I think she was probably having sex with everyone but Peter. Because it's very obvious what was going on. There's not one word of affection between the two of them, and yet she was staying in these... It's in the text messages. He's having an affair with some people, sounds like a few people. And so they knew about Bruce and Nellie. They were receiving the information from them. They knew about Andrew Weissman. They knew about Ahmad Zainab. They knew about Arvinder Sambai. They knew about Allison Saunders. They knew about Stephen Halper. They knew it all because they were running the counterintelligence. And until we start talking about the content of the counterintelligence, that's the reason that Nunes is saying, oh, this is an absurd travesty of justice, what Horowitz has done. This is nothing. Nothing. We have to go towards the conspiracy to a coup d'etat, which is still going on. You have Nadler, you have Pelosi, you have...
The squad.
Notice Adam Schiff has shut up because people keep saying to him, bring us the evidence, because if you don't, we're going to simply kick you out for ethics. And so you have Cummings and Nadler and Schiff and Pelosi and all of them, and then you got the squad and the gang and everybody No, nothing's going to happen, folks. Nothing's going to happen. Right now, top on Breitbart, I think I saw yesterday, they're going after the payments to Stormy Daniels and the other whore.
They have nothing.
It's already been kicked out of court, and she had to pay Trump's lawyer fees. How do they think that's going to wash with anybody?
Okay, quick turn to China and Iran.
Okay, what's happening with Iran? 115 times the 3 ships of the Brits in the Straits of Hormuz have had to challenge the Iranians. Not once did they do a darn thing. Anybody want to ask why? Anybody want to ask why those 115 times couldn't capture a single one of the British ships that they're spread out all over the Persian Gulf? Anybody want to ask why those little speedboats were able to capture 4 ships in just a matter of a sneeze, but now they can't capture nobody? It's all fake. The British are friends of the Iranians. I have to say this so many times, it makes me sad to say it again.
You have to get beyond this thing that the Brits are our friends and that we are great alliances and things like that, because that's the lies that we've been told by their propaganda.
The Brits shot the holes, in my opinion, into the ships that they tried to blame on Iran. Iran would like to have weapons like that, okay? Now, what's really going on with Iran? We've described it so many times before, but what's really, really, really happening is that Germany and the EU, and Britain is on their side, have gone around the sanctions and given $400 million to Iran. And that was in the last few months. Now, what does Iran demand? Because Iran now shows they have missiles, and as soon as they have a nuclear warhead, they're going to launch it at Israel and everybody else. And those missiles they have, where did they get those? They didn't develop those. And we also know that just in the last few months, because of the sanctions that were put on, they've come out and said, they've taunted us by saying we've been enriching uranium to fissile grade, to missile grade uranium and to use for enrichment for plutonium. We're going to make, we have never stopped for 1 second in our nuclear program. That's what they say. Now they say, as of, I think, today or yesterday, if you don't give us $15 billion, we're going to use these rockets. Where'd they get the rockets, folks? They didn't have the rockets 6 months ago. I told you where they got the rockets. Because we saw on pictures from other countries at that moment who hated Iran, showing that the Chinese and the Russians now have a deal that knocked the Brits and the French out of Iran. And that they gave them defensive missiles as well as the missiles that they're using, long-range missiles. Now, that's where North Korea got theirs. Yes, we only paid $5 billion. Remember, Clinton, Bush, and Obama only gave North Korea $5 billion for their nuclear program, and they had to build a couple, and we built them 3 nuclear power plants, and one of them they turned into an enrichment power plant. So everything nuclear going on in North Korea, we, the people of America, paid for with our taxes, and those evil presidents do this as a way to keep war going on. So what's happening in Iran? Iran isn't anywhere near the nuclear bomb. What they are near is simply buying one just like Pakistan did. If you think for 1 minute that Pakistan developed the skills to get nuclear bombs, you're out of your mind. I'm sorry, you're just not thinking clearly. So, what is going on? The Brits are trying to make it look like, oh, they're being given a hard time and they're really doing their job. But, oh, notice they didn't sink that frigate. They didn't sink any of the 3 British ships there, which would simply take a Stinger missile. Okay? They could knock out those ships in a second because they got so many of these stupid Iranian Revolutionary Guard little boats running around, circles around them, okay? So what's happening? The British are going out of their mind. That no one remembers that Bojo hated Trump? Hated him. He would spit. It was unbelievable.
Oh, well, I still...
Remember the fits that Bojo would go into in the parliament.
The whole thing is set up.
He's trying to, but remember, he's trying to clear up the fact that he had his arm around George Papadopoulos in the same week that he was spitting foul curse words at Trump and saying that he would never allow Trump to come into England. Never step a foot there.
But all of a sudden, everything's changed with him now.
Now, but remember, look what's happening right now. It looked like he was going to win the day, and then it looks like he's not going to win the day. Oh, but if he wins the day, then his relationship with Trump determines whether or not England goes on. Their bilateral trade deal with us determines whether England can go on, period. Period. Now, what's going to happen? Well, I don't know. Bojo is a crazy man. Look at him screaming at his girlfriend. Look, he can't drag a brush through his hair. He can't stand up straight. He can't not even hide his lies well. He's one of the most pathetic people in England that could possibly stand up for Brexit. I don't believe either way. Remember, Britain went into the European Union to fleece the European Union Central Bank. They've already done that. Deutsche Bank is collapsing. Its sister is collapsing. All these other countries won't come in because they see how bad it is. Britain's getting out. Why? They already took what they could. George Soros has already fleeced. He now is going to charge, what is it, $80-some billion to screen migrants before he allows the NGO ships and the ships that he pays for to bring these migrants to Europe. Let's remember, how did they get across the water? George Soros paid for it. So when George Soros said he's not going to pay for it anymore and that Europe has to pay for it, they voted and they said, okay, all migrants out. George Soros will pay you your $84 billion, I think it was, a year. And then George Soros said, well, I need my money now. And the European Union started balking and they wanted, like always, well, we're going to put this down the line a little bit. Well,
he's extorting them.
Yes, he was.
And using migrants, or let's just invaders, as his collateral.
And then what happened? European countries don't want anything to do with the European Union, and they're fighting them, and conservatism is coming back. So what does George Soros do? Uses the same German boats with Dutch licenses under an NGO to go pick up more migrants to try to bring them into Salvini's Italy. Did that work, Georgie? That didn't work so good, did it? Or to try to bring them anywhere but Germany, right? That's the last place they get to. The person, Merkel, who invited them, is the last place they get to. So, what's going on here? We don't know what's going on with Iran because Britain is putting up such a smokescreen that it is incredibly hard to tell what's coming or going. So what did Trump do? He just pulled out of the whole dadgum nonsense and basically said to Poland, forget these people. I'll give you more oil than Russia can get. I'll give you more oil than the Germans can get from the Iranians. I'll give you more oil than anybody. Mm-hmm. We'll ship it to you. No problem. He's going country after country after country to take them out of the European Union, which is nothing more than an extension of the United Nations. That is what they wanted for all nations, is to have these clusters all ruled by the United Nations.
You have 4 minutes. China.
Trump beat them on the fake gold. That's all everywhere. Have you noticed that? All the banks are saying, everybody's saying, hey, we got fake gold here. China created it. Everybody knows it. Then they tried the bonds. Okay, they tried selling trillions of dollars of bonds. We bought them in nanoseconds with fake fiat U.S. federal currency issued by the U.S. issued by the U.S. Treasury. Couldn't beat us that way. Couldn't beat us on trade. Why? Because we said, sorry, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton paid members of the Walton family board. Walmart is not going to control America. Then we said, you know what? Most favored nation trading status with the World Trade Organization and the no. The IMF, no. World Trade Organization, no. World Bank, no. Okay, I could list 50 things. Huawei, ZTE, Dragonfly, association with Alphabet, kicking Eric Schmidt out, kicking Google out, kicking Facebook out, but not until they got what they wanted. And now it's a currency. And then it was a trade war, and then, of course, tariffs. And now what is it? Well, they threatened us with Taiwan. They threatened everybody with the one belt, one road. There is no such thing as Taiwan. That's two different thoughts. And so they've threatened Taiwan with military action. And what have we done? Well, every once in a while we sail a ship through the strait and tell China, back off. What's happening with Hong Kong? Notice President Xi of China is backing off. Why? He has no right to extradite people from Hong Kong. But anybody who thought for a second that Britain was giving up Hong Kong, the only reason they gave up Hong Kong is they no longer could control China. Nobody can control China. Look what's happening in Hong Kong. Hong Kong's going to lose. China doesn't admit losing, right? But they are losing 27% down in their economy, their GDP from last year. Trump took out 1/4 of their entire economy in 1 year.
Now, when I look at the Hong Kong situation, I feel like the United States is being baited to get in there with some military action. And I don't want to see that happen. But is that true, or am I not seeing that correctly?
That's another British false flag. You're absolutely right.
So the Brits are really behind
Why aren't the
all
Brits
this.
doing anything?
Well, because the Brits only look out for the Brits and the Queen.
The Brits are fomenting it.
Yes.
I guarantee you that what this is the following, and I've not said this. This is a first. So if you listen to the end of this, you're going to get this
Here's
information.
Your bonus.
Here it is. There was a color revolution going on in China. It's starting in Hong Kong. It already started in Shanghai. And they're kicking Hillary out. They kicked the crypto keys out. They kicked Broadcom out. They kicked Entrust out.
Who's the they? Who's the they doing this?
This is George Soros and the rogue CIA.
Okay,
they have to do this.
Just making sure that we know who that is, because I associate these color revolutions with George Soros.
Now, they have joined with Eric Schmidt and Mark Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel and all of them, because they all thought they were moving into China with Henry Kissinger. Wrong. China was draining your blood like a vampire. So they're realizing this, and they realize capitalism and communism cannot mix ever, never. Don't be stupid. The social credit system is now being put on all corporations that have anything to do with China in any country. Do you understand what that means? That means by Christmas of this year, the Central Committee of Communist China will control the biggest corporations in the world.
And let me give you an on-the-ground example of that. PayPal just recently pulled the services for Moonrock Books. And y'all will know Moonrocks because this is James Fetzer, who puts out the books that we've all read on Sandy Hook and the other false flags. But now PayPal is saying that they can't process his payments anymore for books because of what he says. Well, wait a minute. Well, who gives them the right to do that? Oh, that's right. That's when corporations level their own credit system to either oppose you or to support you.
Elon Musk of PayPal is fake. Everything he says is a lie. He doesn't know anything. He's a complete idiot. All you have to do is listen to him. Same thing with Zuckerberg. Same thing with Peter Thiel. Same thing with McAfee. The only one who knows anything is Eric Schmidt. And all he knows is evil. So what is happening is a color revolution is happening. They tried it in Shanghai. It got beat down. They tried to move it in through Singapore, through Broadcom, to take over 5G of America, and they were going to use that as their headquarters for the Chinese. No. So who is it? It's the British. The British have the most to lose, along with these American corporate digital cyber execs, right? And Hillary Clinton. They have the most to lose in our economy. Well, they couldn't defeat us in all those areas I just mentioned. So what are they trying now? They're trying to say Henry Kissinger was wrong. China is not the new superpower. America is still the superpower. That's good news, folks. Trump did that. And he did it by all those things I just mentioned. So what is happening in Hong Kong, that is a British fomented George Soros attempted a color revolution that is going to be squished like a bug. Mark my words. China is not going to stand for it. China allowed the British to do their false flag of freeing Hong Kong because the British tried to manipulate the oligarchs who were betting on the eastern stock markets and on the Shanghai economic zone. That all failed. Everyone who wins gets killed. So the British said, oh, this isn't working so well. We need to simply destroy China. This is an attempt to pull Trump into Hong Kong to go into a militaristic response to Taiwan, which, mark my words, is going to be a false flag with Taiwan. And mark my words, there already was a false flag with the South China Sea, which everybody knew that was coming. That's no big prediction. And so this is going to happen with Taiwan. When it happens with Taiwan, you're going to see a big mess. And you're going to see the Brits do everything they can. They tried to get us into a war with Iran to justify that Trump was wrong. Trump was not wrong with Iran. Trump was not wrong with Syria. Trump was not wrong with North Korea or China. He has been right on all those points, and he is doing the best job of anyone in history to take China down. Because anyone who's ever tried to enter China became more Chinese than the Chinese, and any time the Chinese enter any country, they take over. They took over America, but they're now being kicked out by President Trump.